All right, it's getting late here, or later in Boston, and I had some final thoughts for the day on the Australian Open, on tennis in general. And it's kind of a deeper philosophical remark, and it's an example of something that I think that you probably are not going to be able to find it in other places on YouTube. But here's the point of what I want to say. The role of personality in the game of tennis is underappreciated. I think the personalities of these players are immensely important in their wins. They're the explanation for their victories in some ways. And I believe that for a number of reasons. The first is that the crowd reaction is often very pivotal in these matches. And if you have a crowd on your side, you can do amazing things as a tennis player. And if you have a crowd that is against you, well, you can do some abominable, devastatingly terrible things as a tennis player. And the crowd reactions, and sometimes you don't feel that when we're watching our highlights, when we watch these matches on TV. But for those of us who have watched tennis live in a substantial way and just did right there in the flesh, we know that, we can sense that, and so that's part of it. Now, the other part of why personality is so powerful is because of the role of it in terms of the games that the styles that the players have, and the games that they play, the particular games that they play. It really is, it determines, it shapes those elements, but you need personality with certain characteristics. I mean, on the one hand, you need to have a certain confidence. That's important. Why? Because even the most likable guys could end up on the wrong side of the crowd on a given night. Even Roger Federer, pretty much the most likable man who ever graced the face of the earth, has ended up on the wrong side of some crowds. It just happens. Now, Federer doesn't have to deal with it as much as a number of the other players. I would say, in fact, Nadal has to deal with that because for the simple reason is that, you know, he's just has his personality is just a little bit hard to connect with. On the court, we love him, right? But so it's a little hard to connect with him. Djokovic, on the other hand, has, I think, undeservingly had been on the wrong side of crowds on a given night, but that ultimately he has a lot of promise in that regard because he has a fantastic personality and he has a certain confidence. I mean, you can go against Djokovic, but he's going to stand tall either way. Even Federer kind of will get down from time to time, but Djokovic, you know, he stands tall. He's got an immense amount of confidence in himself. Now, that has been changed a little bit, I think, by his circumstances. No doubt, it will take a while for him to work up that confidence. You know, an example of just how important personality is, I think, is John McEnroe. And I think John McEnroe is a great tennis player, and I saw him play live. He is actually a very close second to Roger Federer in terms of to my mind, some of the greatest tennis players of all time. Of course, Roger is the GOAT. But McEnroe doesn't hold as many records, but I loved McEnroe's game. But I loved also that his personality. I mean, he rubbed people the wrong way, of course, sometimes, but he had this very compelling personality, and he would literally just go in there and take matches away from people. I mean, he would play great tennis too, but I mean, by the end of the match, I mean, the lines people, I mean, they're so scared of him that they're being generous in their calls. I mean, he just went in there and he stole matches by virtue of just his personality well, and he was, he was no slouch in terms of how smart he was. A smart guy too, and there are some famous instances. I remember one at Wimbledon where McEnroe had a fit, and it's one that's, it's often portrayed, in support of the idea that he was a brat and he was an asshole. Well, I remember that one ball at Wimbledon. It was a serve. I mean, the chalk was flying. I mean, it was so clearly in that the chalk was flying. They did a replay of it, but I don't think they reversed the call. Of course, this was before the day when they had the instant, replay which demonstrates and solves the issue right there and decides the issue, which is a fantastic development in the game. But McEnroe played at a different time, but he's a good example of how personality is really important. Let me know what you think about that. And there've been some there's room for a lot of different kinds of personalities in tennis. I think that the basic unifying factor has to be that there's got to be that underlying love and commitment to the game by the players, and that's where I think that you have it with the Nick Kyrgios, for example. I mean, it's questionable whether he really loves and is committed to the game of tennis. So that's sort of, in a way, outside the boundaries of a permissible personality. But there's a lot of different room. There's room for it. And I just think it's an important and underappreciated element. Subscribe to the page. We're going to be doing at least 2 to 3 videos throughout the Australian Open and beyond. Let's talk soon. Bye.